Hello. This presentation is Cannibals of Modernity. The project explores the Brazilian art movement Anthropofagia, a radical movement within Brazilian modernismo during the 1920s. The presentation follows how that idea emerged, what it meant, and why it still matters today. Brazilian modernists believed that simply imitating Europe kept Brazil trapped in a colonial mindset, so they asked a deliberately provocative question. What if Brazil ate Europe? Not literally, but culturally. The idea was to absorb European art, philosophy, and aesthetics, then digest them and remake them through Brazilian realities, their indigenous roots, African heritage, and local experience. Cannibalism became a metaphor for cultural power rather than colonial dependence. Brazilian Modernismo begins in Sao Paulo in 1922 at the Semana de Arte Moderna. For 3 days, artists, poets, and musicians openly challenged academic rules and conservative taste. They rejected realism, classical beauty, and European hierarchy, instead embracing experimentation, folklore, and hybridity. Although the event shocked many viewers, it marked the birth of Brazilian Modernismo and opened the door for more radical ideas like anthropophagia. Anthropophagia, or cultural cannibalism, took Modernismo a step further. Its core belief was simple: Brazil should devour foreign influence, transform it, resist cultural domination, and create something new. Instead of being ashamed of Brazil's mixed identity, the movement celebrated it. Tarcia do Amaral became the visual heart of anthropophagia. She studied modern art in Paris and was influenced by Cubism and abstraction, but she refused to remain within European frameworks. When she returned to Brazil, her work shifted dramatically. She began painting Brazilian landscapes, workers, plants, and myths using bold colors, simplified forms, and surreal proportions. Her art visualized what anthropophagia was trying to say. Tarsia's most famous painting, Abupuru, was created in 1928. The title comes from a local language and means the man who eats people. The exaggerated foot anchors the figure to the land, while the small head downplays European intellectualism. The cactus and harsh sun emphasize Brazil's interior landscape. This painting was not just an artwork, it became the symbol that inspired anthropophagia. Oswald de Andrade was a poet, critic, and theorist who gave anthropophagia its language. When he saw Abupuru, he realized it could represent an entire cultural philosophy. Oswald believed that Brazil's history of mixture of indigenous, African, and European descent was not a weakness, but a creative advantage. His humor, irony, and provocative language was used to challenge colonial authority and colonial thinking. In 1928, Oswald published the Manifesto Anthropophago. Rather than a traditional essay, it reads like a collage of jokes, slogans, and fragmented ideas. One of its most famous lines is "Only cannibalism unites us." The manifesto argues that Brazil should consume foreign culture without reverence and remake it on its own terms. It rejects purity, hierarchy, and imitation in favor of transformation. Tarsia then began her anthropophagia art phase. After the manifesto, Teresa's style became even more abstract and symbolic. In works like Anthropophagia from 1929, bodies appeared merged, dreamlike, and almost mythic. These paintings visualize cultural mixture, indigenous forms, tropical environments, and modern abstraction fused together. They show anthropophagia not as a theory, but as a lived practice. Anthropophagia was ultimately a political project. It challenged the idea that modernity had to come from Europe. By reclaiming the colonial image of cannibal, Brazilian artists flipped the narrative. They positioned themselves not as cultural victims, but as active agents who chose what to consume and how to transform it. Art became a form of resistance. Anthropophagia emerged nearly a century ago, but its logic still shapes Brazilian culture today. We see it in music that blends samba, funk, and hip hop, in fashion that mixes global trends with local identity, and in digital culture built on remixing and adaptation. The idea of absorbing outside influence and making it one of its own became a defining feature of Brazilian creativity. In conclusion, anthropophagia was never about destruction. It was about transformation. Through do Amaral images and Oswald de Andrade's manifesto, Brazil claimed the right to define its own modernity. Instead of copying the world, Brazil consumed it, reworked it, and created something new. That spirit of cultural cannibalism continues to shape Brazilian art and identity today.